You are defeated, beast!
You remember where we left the story of Hercules? He had strangled a lion. He had solved the unsolvable. He had chased a deer, patiently, carefully, without complaint, for 1 full year. 3 labors done, 9 remaining. I want you to notice something before we continue. We are 3 labors in, and Hercules has not yet lost his temper. He has not yet been broken. He has not yet stood at the edge of himself and looked down. But today, we discuss 3 labors that together teach us something the first 3 did not. The first 3 tested what Hercules could do. These next 3 will begin to test what he could endure, not from monsters, but from the world's indignity, its ingratitude, and the peculiar cruelty of tasks designed to humiliate a great man. The 4th labor was a boar. Not a mythical creature this time, no invincible hide, no divine protection, no impossible regeneration. A boar. A very large, very dangerous, very real boar, terrorizing the slopes of Mount Erymanthus. The peasants who worked those hills were afraid to leave their homes. The fields went unplanted. The villages were starving. Eurystheus sent Hercules to capture it alive. Now, before we reach the boar, we must speak about what happened on the way there, because it is on the road to the 4th labor that Hercules nearly undoes himself, not by the boar, but by wine. He stopped to visit Pholus, a centaur, a friend. Pholus opened a great jar of wine that belonged communally to all the centaurs of the region. The smell drifted across the mountain. The other centaurs came, and they came angry, armed with rocks and pine trees, furious that what was shared had been opened without their consent. A battle broke out. Hercules fought. In the fighting, his poisoned arrows, the arrows dipped in hydra blood, struck centaurs who had no quarrel with him. Struck even Chiron, the wisest and most beloved of all centaurs, immortal Chiron, who could not die but now could not stop suffering. Yeah, you might be asking, was this not Hercules' fault? Yes. Sit with that, I will not soften it. He brought the arrows, he loosed them in the chaos. He did not mean to harm the innocent, but the innocent were harmed. The consequences of our actions do not care about our intentions. This is a truth the Stoics take seriously. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we must not only act rightly but think carefully about our actions in advance. Because good intention without careful action is not virtue, it is sentiment. Hercules mourned Chiron's suffering deeply, and he carried that mourning with him up the mountain. Here's what is remarkable. He did not collapse into guilt. He did not abandon the labor. He did not decide that because he had caused harm, he was unworthy to continue. He went up the mountain. He drove the boar into deep snow, the heavy winter snow of Erymanthus, until the animal exhausted itself, sank in, could run no more. Then he bound it and carried it down. He carried a living boar down a mountain. When he arrived at the palace gates and called for Eurystheus, the king, famously, humiliatingly, hid inside a large bronze jar. Hercules stood there, boar over his shoulder, watching the king of Mycenae disappear into a pot. What do you think he did? He set the boar down, he waited, and when Eurystheus finally emerged, Hercules received his next instruction without comment. This is what the Stoics call apatheia, not the absence of feeling, but the refusal to be governed by feeling. Hercules felt the absurdity of this moment. He felt the grief of Chiron. He felt, perhaps, the indignation of being made to stand outside a palace gate with a captured boar while a frightened king hid in pottery. He felt all of it, and he stood steady anyway. That is the 4th labor. The 5th labor is, I confess, my favorite. Not because it is the most dramatic, not because it is the most dangerous. In fact, it is neither. It is my favorite because of all the 12 labors, this one is the most nakedly designed to humiliate, and it is the one where Hercules responds with the most elegant mind. The stables of Augeas. Augeas was a king with a vast fortune in cattle, 3,000 head, some accounts say, the greatest herd in all of Greece, and the stables that housed them had not been cleaned in 30 years. 30 years. I will let that settle. Eurystheus commanded Hercules to clean the stables in a single day. Now I want you to understand what Eurystheus was doing here. He was not simply assigning a difficult task. He was assigning a disgusting one. He was saying to the greatest hero of his age, "Go shovel dung, you, Hercules. Go shovel 30 years of dung in a single day." Most men, even great men, would have broken under the shame of it. The insult was the point. The labor was designed not to test the body, but to crush the spirit. How is there any Stoic lesson in mucking out a stable? Let me ask you something first. When you receive a task that is beneath your dignity, a task that you believe no one of your standing should be asked to perform, what do you actually object to? Is it the task itself? Or is it what other people will think when they see you doing it? It is the second thing. It is almost always the second thing. The Stoics call this enslavement to doxa, to the opinion of others. When you will not do a necessary thing because of how it looks, you are not free. You are a prisoner of every eye that might fall upon you. Your dignity is not your own. It belongs to whoever happens to be watching. Hercules looked at 30 years of dung and saw an engineering problem. He diverted 2 rivers, the Alpheus and the Peneus, rerouted them through the stables with precisely constructed channels, and let the water do what would have taken years of manual labor. He cleaned the stables in a single afternoon. He did not touch a shovel. He used his mind. And here's where the story deepens. Augeas had promised Hercules a tenth of the herd as payment, a side agreement made privately. When the task was done, Augeas refused to pay. He argued that the rivers had done the work, not Hercules, and therefore no reward was owed. He cheated him. Eurystheus later ruled that this labor would not count, also because payment had been discussed, making it a transaction rather than a pure act of service. So, Hercules was cheated by Augeas. Eurystheus invalidated the labor. He had solved an impossible task with brilliance and received nothing, not credit, not payment, not acknowledgement. That is deeply unjust. Yes, it is. And this is where I ask you to pay very close attention, because what comes next is not what a lesser philosophy would teach you. Hercules did not pretend the injustice was acceptable. He did not smile and say all is as it should be. The Stoics are not a philosophy of passivity. Years later, after the 12 labors were complete, Hercules returned and made war on Augeas. He remembered. He acted. Justice is also a virtue. The Stoic does not absorb injustice without response. He absorbs it without being destroyed by it in the moment. There is a difference between suffering an injustice and being ruined by it. Hercules was not ruined. He filed the wrong in the ledger of things that must one day be addressed, and he continued. He left the stables clean. He left the betrayal intact in his memory, and he walked on to the 6th labor. There is a kind of problem that cannot be solved by strength, cannot be solved by patience, cannot be solved by intelligence alone. It can only be solved by the willingness to cause a disturbance. The Stymphalian birds nested at a lake near the town of Stymphalios, a vast flock of creatures with bronze beaks, bronze feathers sharp as arrows, and the habit of raining those feathers down onto crops and people below. The region had been made uninhabitable. No army could approach through the dense marsh surrounding the lake. No archer could target birds hidden in the thick canopy of trees. The problem was not how to fight them. The problem was how to find them, how to get them into the open where they could be dealt with. Athena came to Hercules here. She gave him a rattle, a great bronze rattle crafted by Hephaestus, and told him to make noise. A goddess gave him the right tool for the problem. Think about what most men would have done upon arriving at that marsh. They would have looked for a way through the mud. They would have tried to drain the lake. They would have studied the trees for a way to climb. They would have asked how to get in. Hercules asked a different question. He asked, "How do I get them to come out?" He climbed to high ground above the lake. He shook the rattle with all his strength. The sound, bronze on bronze, tremendous and discordant, shook the birds from the trees in a panicking cloud. They rose into the sky, thousands of them, filling the air above the lake. And there, in the open, with his bow, he shot them. Not all of them, the flock was too vast. Many fled, flying east until they were gone. But enough fell that the region was free, and those that escaped did not return. The lesson the Stoics draw from this is subtle, and I want you to hear it carefully. There's a concept we call prososes, self-attention, watchfulness of the mind. It is the practice of observing your own thinking in real time, noticing when you're approaching a problem along a single habitual path, noticing when you're asking the wrong question, noticing when effort is being applied in entirely the wrong direction. Most men at that lake would have died in the marsh trying to fight birds in the dark. Hercules stopped. He looked. He changed the question. This is not cleverness. Cleverness is a talent, and talents are accidents of birth. This is discipline of mind, the practice, cultivated through years of attention, of questioning your assumptions before spending your strength on them. He did not fight what could not be fought where it lived. He changed the conditions so that it had to come to him. And if Athena had not come, if there had been no rattle, then he would have found another way to make noise. The goddess gave him bronze. He would have beaten two rocks together. He would have shouted until his voice broke and every bird for a mile flushed from its tree. The point is not the rattle. The point is that he already understood the question. The tool followed from the question. Once you are asking the right thing, the means tend to present themselves. The birds rose. He shot them. The lake was quiet by evening. That is the sixth labor. 6 labors. We are halfway. Let me tell you what I hope you are beginning to see, because it is not what most people see when they are told this story. They see escalation, each task harder than the last. A hero growing in fame and power until he reaches the impossible and defeats it. That is the wrong story. What I see is refinement. Each labor sanding away something, some assumption, some attachment, some layer of ego that a lesser version of Hercules was still carrying. The boar taught him, your good intentions do not cancel your consequences. Carry the grief. Keep moving. The stables taught him, dignity is not what others see you doing, it is what you know yourself to be while doing it. Injustice is real, and a virtue called justice will address it in its own time. The birds taught him, before you exhaust your strength, examine your question, 6 down, 6 remain, and they will be harder. Not in the way we usually mean, harder, more dangerous, more physically demanding. Harder in the way that matters. They will ask him to go further from home, further from what he knows, and finally into places where no living man had gone before.